when it comes to your material problems and material issues, you have to look at those that have it worse than you. And when it comes to spiritual issues, you have to look at those that have it better than you.
It sounds a little bit crazy, but what's crazier is doing it halfway.
Firstly, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are connected to the Rebbe in many different ways.
Right. Well, if he's not challenging you, he's not much of a teacher.
If you get guidance, if you get feedback from the Rebbe or from some other tzaddik, you can ask for, am I getting it right? Am I understanding the feedback? Am I understanding the guidance?
Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, Schneur. Right, I'm sitting here with Schneur Hickson.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Good, we're excited to have you here. I'm sitting here with Schneur Hickson. Schneur and I had a conversation a couple months back, maybe two and a half months ago. That was done virtually, and we decided to have one in person. So welcome back.
Thank you.
The format that we'll be using for this conversation are more, short discussions on different topics that you and I, some have discussed offline, some maybe we'll introduce here, and probably broken up into 3 or 4 different discussions. So hopefully those who watch it, like it, and stick around for the rest of the conversations. So the first topic that I'd like to speak to you about is your personal relationship with the Rebbe. Okay. So a little background for those. You and I both grew up in a Chabad community. Some may know what that is, some may not. Even for those who've heard the name, may not actually be that familiar with what it is. They may just see it as some sort of outreach organization that has centers in different places where you can get kosher food and a minyan and prayer and other such things. But in fact, it's a tradition over a couple of 100 years that has a leader and a founder, and the Rebbe being the 7th in that dynasty, and pretty much based on, as I understand it, the relationship with the Rebbe. So it's not just a side perspective, it's a central point. The reason why I wanted to discuss it with you is that you seem to have developed a personal relationship with him, despite the fact that he passed in 1994. You seem to develop a personal relationship with him that guides you in your day-to-day life, that you found personal meaning and connection and relationship in, and that intrigued me. So I thought, hey, let's have a conversation about that. Did I accurately portray your A, Chabad, in your opinion, B, your relationship with the Rebbe?
Yeah, well, I think Chabad is, we have the idea of a Rebbe that helps us connect to Hashem, helps us to connect to God. And it's the leader of the generation in that sense. As far as my relationship with the Rebbe, I think it's certainly not unique. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are connected to the Rebbe in many different ways. The Rebbe's had an influenced their lives. The Rebbe has thousands of shluchim, of emissaries around the world in all different places and corners of the globe, guiding people, being the local spiritual leader for the Jewish community. And it's my belief and it's my knowledge that there are many shluchim, many emissaries of the Rebbe, and many people that are connected to the Rebbe in one way or another that do get clear guidance from the Rebbe, support from the Rebbe. We mentioned there's usually hundreds of people a day that visit his resting place in Queens, and there's many beyond that that write to the Rebbe in some form. So for many people, I think it was like it used to be for me, which was I would write to the Rebbe from time to time, especially when there was a major moment in my life, whether it was moving property or moving to a different place or a big major business decision, or working on my spiritual journey. And so people write to the Rebbe and ask for guidance or help, or if someone needs a miracle or some resolution. And so I think many people have experienced some kind of support or guidance. But for me, going back over 6 years ago, it was always I would only get clear answers from the Rebbe or clear guidance from the Rebbe when I had a major thing going on. One one time in particular, I was moving from one apartment to another, and it was much more expensive, and it was different, and I wanted some kind of, guidance. Is it the correct thing to do? And so I got a very clear answer. It was the right thing to move to a larger apartment. So there was only, when I got married, there were key moments in my life, like I think for many other people, where somehow the direction or the guidance or the support came through.
So can we clarify what we're referring to? Because one thing is, while I do meet many people who are influenced by his teachings,
Mm-hmm.
I don't meet very many people who are engaging in a personal relationship with Rebbe, which, as mentioned, right, since 1994, he's no longer with us in that way. Obviously, many people feel a personal relationship and connection, but in terms of physical form and being a human in a body, that has ceased since 1994. And while I see many people who are influenced again by his teachings, and I include myself in that mix, there is a different quality that your relationship seems to have. It actually seems to be more in line with the way it was communicated to me as a child. I just don't normally see it in practice. So that's what I was interested in in dissecting a little bit.
So that changed approximately 6 years ago with Rosh Chodesh Kislev. 6.5 years ago, I was going through a very, very, very extremely challenging moment in my personal life and in my marriage, and I was visiting the Rebbe's resting place, the Ohel, and it actually took me 4 visits over a few days to finish writing my multi-page letter to the Rebbe about all the changes that were happening in my life at the time, moving back to New York, considering what to do with our marriage, our children, and all these different parts of my life that were shifting and moving. And I came back to the Ohel a number of times. I think it was a total of 4. And on the 4th visit, I had finally finished my letter, and I entered into the Rebbe's resting place, into the actual Ohel. And I did my Lashon, I did my prayers, I read my letter to the Rebbe, and when I came out, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was kind of in a daze, I guess, and I just walked over to the shelf and took out a volume of one of the many volumes of the Rebbe's letters. And I opened it up, and I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just like, maybe there'll be an answer for me. Maybe yes, maybe no. In the past, I didn't typically get answers, only when, like I said earlier, only when there was a major thing going on in my life. And I opened up the Rebbe's letters, and there were 2 letters there that were both exceptionally clear and relevant and direct and very strong. And it kind of, I would say that it wasn't just the guidance that came through and the clarity that came through, but also there was a huge energetic punch I felt from it, in a sense. It landed heavy on me. And when I read what the Rebbe was telling me to do, which was the opposite of what I was thinking to do, and giving me reasons and really fleshing out the issue in a very aggressive way.
Without going into too much detail, more personal, business?
This was very personal.
Very personal.
It was very personal, and it was about my whole approach to life and the journey that I was on personally. And it also gave me the reasons for it, and my heart, the way I remember it was my heart went to my feet. Like my heart just dropped to the ground. Like it was such a heavy, firstly, it seemed impossible what the Rebbe was telling me to do. It seemed like, how am I going to do this? And number 2, it was just clear that the Rebbe was very aggressively guiding me. And so I just stumbled back into the Ohel, and I spoke to the Rebbe, and I said, what do you want from me? How am I supposed to do this? And so I came back out, and I opened up the Rebbe's volume, some other volume of letters again, randomly. And there was a letter there saying that when it comes to your material problems and material issues, you have to look at those that have it worse than you. And when it comes to spiritual issues, you have to look at those that have it better than you. So you have to be jealous of those that are ahead of you spiritually, and when it comes to your material problems and challenges, look at those that have it worse. So that was to me my, like, okay, you think you have it really bad, and this isn't really hard for you, but there are people that have it worse. So consider yourself lucky. And so, okay, so then I decided that maybe I don't want to listen to what the Rebbe's telling me to do. So I tried to reach some rabbis that night. Again, it was Rosh Chodesh Kislev 6.5 years ago. It was a Thursday night.
So you're at a pivotal moment in your life where you had to make decisions.
A major decision for myself personally.
Right.
Something that I was very adamant about, and something that was very, very challenging for me. And so I tried to reach out to rabbis, and I wasn't able to reach a rabbi that night. But then I went home and I shared these letters with my wife, and she pointed out that the letters were written on a specific date that was very relevant, and it was also mentioned another date that was extremely relevant to the issue at hand. And so when my wife pointed that out, that was just like the thing that sealed the deal. Like, there's no way this is some kind of accident. There is no way.
It wasn't a coincidence. You felt that this was a very personal instruction.
I saw that the instruction was exceptionally clear and strong. But once the dates came into play, which was like literally, it's dated for you, and it's dated for your issue, in a completely unbelievable way. So that for me was like any shred of doubt that I had that this was the Rebbe guiding me was now gone, because this is impossible. This could not be a coincidence. It could not be a mistake.
So walk me through the mindset of someone who's in a difficult space, can go to the gravesite to pray, repeat that 4 times, meaning you went over 4 different days.
I went over a couple of days,
four different times.
Yeah.
And still, after that, there's kind of this
resistance.
Right, this resistance or shred of doubt. Is there's like some cognitive dissonance that's existing prior to that? Like prior to your wife pointing out the dates, it's like, hey, this is real. What you're engaging in is actually a real practice, and it's an ancient Jewish practice. This is not new. Praying at gravesites, communicating through holy books, is not.
Yeah, well, I think because we're always given the option of free will and free choice. And if, let's say, the Rebbe were to show up to me in a body and talk to me face to face, there would be no choice. It would be like, this is a miracle, like what took place at Mount Sinai.
Right.
And you can't deny it. And so here the Rebbe's coming to me physically and telling me, do this, don't do that. So there would be no free choice for me. It would be like, okay, this is, but when you get guidance through other forms, like through a holy book, the Rebbe's letters, someone suddenly sending you something or whatever, you still have that, you could have that doubt in the back of your mind. Is this really my guidance, or is it something that you have the option of opting out?
Despite the fact that you're going through all these practices, that's why it feels like a little bit of a cognitive dissonance to me, where you're engaging in where someone could, prior to this, where someone could engage in all these practices. Because on the one hand, saying you're following, deciding whether to purchase an apartment based on opening a book to a random page.
After I wrote to the Rebbe, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, after you wrote to the Rebbe, opening a book to a random page and saying, okay, this is my instruction, and then feeling clear about it, right? So someone can look at it and say it's a little bit crazy.
Right.
On the other hand, what's even crazier is to do some of that stuff and not believe it, right? So to wear a beard if someone isn't comfortable with it, or wear a yarmulke if someone's not comfortable, or to pay for Jewish private school if someone's not comfortable, or kosher food, or all of the other many lifestyle choices that go along with that belief, but then kind of fall short of that complete, commitment
acceptance
to it.
Or commitment.
Right, all of it. Meaning, it sounds a little bit crazy, but what's crazier is doing it halfway.
Yeah, so throughout history, firstly, we're all human beings, and we have moments where we're clear, moments where we're not, moments where we feel more confident about something, moments where we're doubting something. I think if you look at history, the journey of the Jewish nation, there were ups and downs, and there were moments, like not long after the revelation of God at Mount Sinai, the Jewish people went and served the golden calf, or a portion of the Jewish people served
Right.
the golden calf. So the notion that a human being can be so solid and so confident in something, if you look at the past, I did get clear guidance from the Rebbe, but it was on occasion, and there were many times where I felt there was no guidance or there was no feedback. And so when you do get clear guidance, you could question it. It's very normal, very human to
Understood.
wonder, am I really getting feedback? Am I really getting guidance? And I'm going to skip forward. Even after years of getting clear guidance from the Rebbe consistently, there were moments where I got clear guidance from the Rebbe, and I was like, I get the guidance, but there's one word missing, or like the word that describes the title of the issue is missing from the letter. So is this for me? And there were many times where I asked the Rebbe, can you confirm that this is guidance that you're giving me? And I got very clear confirmation. Like, certainly you already received my response in the previous letter, or my name
Understood.
and date of birth in the next letter. So it's very normal to doubt, and to be sometimes unclear or
Understood.
unsure. Yeah.
Right. Also, it's a major decision, so you want to make sure you're
Yeah, and you on the one hand you have what seems to be a clear guidance, clear response. On the other hand, there may be some doubt in the back of your mind. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
right. Meaning, obviously, if you're wrestling with a decision to the point that you're visiting a gravesite multiple times, you recognize that there's a validity in both of those paths. Otherwise, it would have been already clear to you.
Yeah, you have options and you have choices.
Correct.
We have many.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
So, I guess just on the concept of confirmation, there were many, many times after that, as my relationship with the Rebbe grew, I would say, and continued, where the Rebbe would give me guidance, and I would ask, am I reading you clearly? Am I getting it right? My daughter, I was looking to send her to a school, and every time I wrote about her, I would get an answer that mentioned Beis Rivka. So I kept trying to get her into Beis Rivka, and that did not work out. We tried, and it wasn't working. Meanwhile, my wife went and found a school called Chabad Girls Academy, and they were willing to take her in. So I wrote to the Rebbe, you told me Beis Rivka, but my wife, meanwhile, they won't accept her. And my wife, meanwhile, found a school called Chabad Girls Academy. And so what should I do? Should I send it to Chabad Girls Academy? I'll keep trying to get her into Beis Rivka. And I opened up the Rebbe's letters, and it was addressed to Benas Chabad Snif Crown Heights, Chabad Girls, Crown Heights Division, right?
Uh-huh.
Which is basically the name of the school in Crown Heights. So I said, okay, Rebbe, are you telling me? I went back to the Rebbe, and I asked the Rebbe again, are you telling me that it's okay to send it to Chabad Girls Academy and not Beis Rivka? Like, am I getting the
Correct.
answer correctly? And the next letter I opened up randomly was Agudas Benas Chabad. Chabad Girls, I don't know if you could translate Aguda as academy or something similar. Again, a repeat of the name of this school that was willing to accept her. So that was my confirmation. Like, I got
Understood.
two completely random letters that both essentially named the school that I was asking about, which had changed from the constant Beis Rivka I was getting. So you can get confirmation that if you get guidance, if you get feedback from the Rebbe or from some other tzaddik, you can ask for, am I getting it right? Am I understanding the feedback? Am I understanding the guidance? Show me the way.
And after that time, after this experience 6 years ago, this kind of developed further and further to the point that
Well,
it is today.
yeah, I mean, it kept, for a certain period of time, it was a shock. I kept going back to the Rebbe week after week. I tried to visit the Rebbe every week. And probably the first 20 weeks or so, every time I opened up Igros after I would come out of the oil, there would be clear guidance for me there. And my heart would just like drop, I'm not sure. But I had like a visceral reaction because I can't believe the Rebbe is still there for me. The Rebbe is still guiding me. And the Rebbe is still answering me clearly. And this was every twist, every turn, every adjustment. So that continued to develop over the years. And as I continued to be guided by the Rebbe, and I continued to take actions that were often very difficult for me and very challenging for me to follow the Rebbe's guidance, I got to see how the Rebbe was getting more present in my life and showing up in different ways. And it reached a point where I continued to write to the Rebbe regularly, and I continued to visit the Rebbe very regularly. But there are many times where I think a question and the answer will come. So I view it as a telepathic connection, and it became known to me that the Rebbe had that with people before 1994 as well, where certain people wouldn't call in to the Rebbe's office or write to the Rebbe. They would just think the question, or they faced the problem, and the Rebbe would tell his secretaries to reach out to that person and tell them what to do. So that was another example of how I felt my relationship with the Rebbe was deepening and developing. And again, I think it was in response to the actions that I was taking, meaning my showing my willingness to listen to the guidance, even when it was very difficult for me, even when it took a big leap of faith. That deepened the relationship.
Is there an example you're comfortable giving us of something which took a leap of faith? Meaning, you can only really make that decision based on truly believing that this is, like it's going all in on this being very clear.
Yeah, there were a number of times where I kept getting guidance from the Rebbe to help certain specific institutions, way beyond my means, and that would be a good example, a practical example that people can appreciate, where it didn't make any sense at all, but I did it because I'm getting clear guidance from the Rebbe to do it. There was even one time where I went into 770 before I took the action that the Rebbe was guiding me to take, and I just looked at the Rebbe's place of davening by his stender, by his where he used to pray in 770. And I said, Rebbe, just give me some kind of confirmation I'm not going crazy, because what I'm about to do is completely crazy. And just give me one more confirmation. I'd already received confirmation at that point, but I walked into 770, I went to Daven Shachris, went to Daven my morning prayers. Give me some kind of confirmation. And the moment those words came out of my mouth, someone very close to the subject literally bumped into me, like in a very unusual way, just knocked into me. And I looked like, who just knocked into me? It was someone very close to the situation. So I understood that this was my final confirmation, and I went ahead and did the crazy thing, if you will, and within 24 hours, it turned into pretty massive miracles. So,
got it. Okay, so you're living your life on in that path and in that way. It's beautiful.
That I wouldn't say that I chose it, but right. The guidance has been very clear, and I do my best to follow. There are some times where I'm more successful in doing what the Rebbe is telling me to do and guiding me to do, and sometimes where I delay something, or I'm definitely not perfect in doing everything I'm told to do.
Right. Well, if he's not challenging you, he's not much of a teacher. Who told me this? They said his speaker, I think it was Gedaliah Fenster. He told me that someone told him that it was Gedaliah Fenster. I'm saying it was. So he said that someone told him that when he's speaking in front of a crowd, he should be making some of the people a little bit nauseous.
Making them uncomfortable, yeah.
Right. If he's not evoking that feeling a little bit, then then what exactly?
And I'd say that does describe well the journey that I was on with my relationship with the Rebbe, where I felt like this was not just with my relationship with the Rebbe, but my spiritual journey in general, which was there were many things where it was like step by step. Okay, you overcame that challenge. Now we're going to bring you something bigger, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to bring bigger challenges into my life, God forbid, because sometimes we can draw that down when we talk about that. But it was like step by step. Like, okay, you got past this one, but then there's a new day, and there's a new challenge, and there's a new thing to tackle. So, and that's what the Rebbe's famous for, pushing people hard
Very
and
hard.
every day. Don't think that because yesterday you did a good job and you gave some tzedakah, or you helped somebody, or you did the right thing and you made the right choice, or you overcame your impulses. So then today you can sit back and relax. Spiritually, that's not an option. So.
Right. I guess I'll share this personal story. It's connected. So several years ago, I was involved. I think I shared this on a previous podcast, but in any case, several years ago, I was involved with a charity campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and we helped somewhere close to 600 Chabad houses raise like $55 million. And it was the second year this program was done. I call it Chabad Global Giving Day, and that time period it was like a ton of work.
Mm.
I was like 3 weeks. I was mostly invested in this. It wasn't what I planned to do, but as what I thought I was doing at first was helping support it, and very quickly I was the one leading it. And I probably spoke to, between speaking on the phone and messaging, probably 200 Chabad houses over the course of these 3 weeks, and pushing them to raise more and challenge grants, and busy with raising money from donors, was very involved. And I was speaking to a rabbi friend of mine, and he says, you should write a report. It's common that people would write a report to the Rebbe if something was ungood. Separate from that, I was wrestling with like Shabbos and how much to bring it into my life. And there were things I had done at that point in time. I had stopped working on Shabbos. I said I'm going to stop driving on Shabbos at that point already. But many other things. I was using my phone. I was doing other stuff. And what I got back was like a scathing letter about Shabbos, which to me felt very relevant. Was A, I was something I was thinking about. B, there was no kudos and congratulations for it, which in hindsight was indicative of the person I was told about growing up, even though in 1994 I was 9 years old, and it was someone who pushed. So it felt very characteristic of his
There was energy.
Of his style. But what was uncharacteristic was the forcefulness of it. Like it wasn't like it was very
Sharp.
Yeah, very sharp, and like the meat and potatoes about the laws of Shabbos, and with someone about traveling on a boat and how careful they have to be planning the trip in advance and when it's okay and when it's not. And I was like, okay. After that, I added a little bit more of Shabbos into my life. I think the move I made then was to, I think the move I made then was to put my phone away, which was obviously a major step, and have kind of continued since then to add more and more. So I've seen that in that way, that like a letter could have an impact, but not to the point of.
But you still have free choice.
Right. And I still do.
Right.
This Shabbos comes up, I still have free choice again.
Right.
Yeah, and the enthusiasm that next Shabbos was tried with was, that I gave is not the one that this last Shabbos had, right? That's a year and a half ago, this story, or 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously in a different place. So yeah, the free choice wasn't only then, it still exists now.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've heard about the Rebbe, many people mention, was that the Rebbe knew his customers, which is that the Rebbe, also in my experience, like the Rebbe knows who he's dealing with and what the bigger picture is with this particular person. And so when the Rebbe can be sharp with someone, he will be, if it's the right place and right time and place. And when the Rebbe, from my perspective, when the Rebbe sees you doing so much good and contributing so much to the world and to his work and to Shluchim, and then you ask about Shabbos, and the Rebbe's like...
No, I didn't ask about Shabbos. I reported this thing.
Sorry.
In my mind, I had some of that.
This was a major issue in your life at the time. It was something that was on your mind.
Correct.
So the Rebbe was like straight to the point. And on that note, I once heard from Rabbi Shachat in Rabbi Emmanuel Shachat. He used to translate letters for the Rebbe from certain languages. The Rebbe knew many languages, but there were some that he didn't. So he used to translate the letters. So he once proposed to the Rebbe that he summarize the translation. Instead of translating the entire letter, let me just give you a key summary of what the questions of the person who wrote. And the Rebbe's response to him was, don't do that, because most people don't write what's really bothering them. They write about other things. And when I read the whole letter, I can answer them about what they're really asking about. And if you summarize, I don't have that.
Right, we miss the context.
Yeah. Or the Rebbe won't be able to read the energy between the lines of what's really bothering the person or what's really important for that person to know. But sometimes we ask about one thing, and the Rebbe comes in hard on another subject that's much bigger issue that needs to be addressed.
Right. I don't think I don't remember, but I don't think the letter had a question attached to it. I think it was just one said, hey, write a report. And
right, but that's the point, that people write about other things.
Right.
But the Rebbe's response doesn't
Understood.
always... The Rebbe's response is going to be about what's the biggest priority for you to know at this time.
Understood. One more question on this topic. has, because we talk about a lot of healing, growth,
Mm-hmm.
has this been a resource that you've leveraged for your healing path as well? Because I know that's something that's
Absolutely.
important to you.
So there was a period of time where I was using a specific mental health counselor, psychologist, and for a period of time, the Rebbe's answers were mirroring the advice I was getting from this psychologist. Like the Rebbe was giving me mental health guidance, essentially, that was matching. It was like they were moving together step by step, and then this psychologist proposed something that was very clearly not what the Rebbe's guidance was, and then the Rebbe completely diverged. Like, do not go down that path that this psychologist is saying is okay. But in general, I mentioned last time on the last podcast, spiritual and psychological work are essentially the same. I read recently, Maaseh Merkava, the journey to prophetic insight, is psychoanalysis, is understanding the inner world, working through your thunder, through your lightning, through the different descriptions that are given around prophetic ascent, are essentially referring to psychological ascent. So psychology and spirituality are very intertwined and almost one and the same. There are spiritual realities and worlds and beings that are beyond our inner world, but our inner world is the connection to that, and is our connection to our own spirituality and our own higher self. I'm not sure how I got there, but
just about using the Rebbe as a guide for healing,
yes.
You're saying it's the same.
So when the Rebbe is guiding me, whether it's in areas of Torah mitzvahs, of doing the right thing, whether it's an area of a family issue or a decision making, it's all one and the same. It's all spiritual, it's all psychological, and it's all intertwined.
Okay, so we'll use this as a kind of plug and a separation between this and the next episode, because it's actually something I've been thinking about, this idea of, do I really speak about healing and growth, or do I just speak about life? Like, is it one and the same?
Absolutely.
So certainly, if someone's on a spiritual path,
it's
one and the same.
You read Azul Tzarech Aliyah. We only come into this world to grow and to learn. It's schoolhouse earth, right? We come here to go through whatever grade we need to go through, right? Or go from grade to grade. And we could sometimes drop a grade if we go off the wrong path. So when you talk about life and you talk about mental health and you talk about resolving issues and spiritual growth, it's all why we're here.
Okay, so let's pause it on this one. A little teaser for the next episode.
Okay, very good.
Beautiful.